Mug Z is Gallywix's head of security and the second last boss in the Liberation of Undermine Raid in World of Warcraft, The War Within. This is an extremely complicated boss fight with an alternating set of main mechanics based off player choice, a frustrating intermission, and a chaotic final phase. So buckle in, we're in for a lot of incoming mechanics. I was not actually able to get this boss very far in my PTR testing, so a big shout out to Kagami, who is allowing me to use his footage from taking the boss down. You can find a link to his channel in the video description. Alright, so Mug and Z are the two heads of a two-headed ogre, and your team has to choose which one's mechanics you're going to be dealing with at which time. This room is split into a gray side and a brown side, and the side with the majority of players in it is the side that you deal with the mechanics for. As long as you're on one side, the boss constantly gains energy, and if he ever reaches 100% energy, he wipes the group. So you can't just stay on one side that you're used to dealing with and take the boss down. You are going to have to alternate back and forth, but you can choose when to transition him based off what's best for your team, as well as you can decide which side to start on based on what you prefer. When the entire team is on the brown side of the arena, Mug takes over, and he is a shaman. You're going to be dealing with earth, fire, lightning, and ice attacks. On the side, he's going to mark two players with Earthshaker jails. There will be brown circles around them, with after a delay will erupt walls in a circle and spawn a earthen elemental in the center. These walls break line of sight, and the players inside are going to be trapped in there fighting the earthen elemental. This thing will be rotating around doing cone-based attacks that the players have to be moving out of while dealing damage to him and interrupting his casts. On heroic and lower, upon killing the ad, you're going to get knocked back into the walls, and if you hit a wall, you detonate it and move outwards. If at any point there's no players within the earthen jail and the elemental is still alive, it enrages, gaining 500% increased damage. It'll also enrage if at any time Mug Z is inside one of the jails. So when these earthen jails go out, you have to set up a team of healers and DPS to go into each of the different circles and be able to burn down and kill the ads. During this phase, he also marks some players with icy circles. And on heroic or higher, a white arrow will point at you when you have one of these circles. This will give you a slipping and sliding mechanic that you're going to slide around as you move, and then if the arrow is pointing at you, an icy shot is going to shoot out and deal a huge amount of damage to you. If this shot hits one of the jail walls, it'll detonate the wall and open up that area so other players can help with the elemental inside. So players that get this icy effect need to move so that there is a wall between them and their arrow. There are two tank mechanics in this phase. The Storm Fury finger gun will shoot out at the current target and do a big AoE cone in front of the boss for a short duration. The tank targeted with this needs to face the boss away from the group and take the zap themselves. This then creates a bunch of electrical pools around the arena that players have to avoid. The other tank mechanic is his Molten Golden Knuckles. He's going to punch the current tank, sending them flying backwards and leaving a trail of gold behind them. They'll then gain a debuff that they need to move around to be able to lose stacks from. If after 12 seconds they still have any stacks remaining, they're going to become stunned for 30 seconds. The tank that gets knocked back needs to run around and drop the golden pools on the ground. However, these pools do not go away and are going to stay for the rest of the fight. You need to maintain these pools along the outer walls, trying to avoid losing too much space. Your group needs to know when to move from the brown side over to the black side. You're going to do this either after the first or after the second set of earthen jails, depending on your team's damage output. You need to be able to make sure that all players can move to the opposite side. You're going to have to be able to take out the earthen elementals and then get over to the other side. Once a majority of players has moved to the opposite side, do a short duration elemental discharge doing damage to the party, and then begin the alternate phase. Z is a mechanics and demolitions expert, summoning a bunch of bomb-based creatures and having all mechanical-based effects. He'll summon some Mark II electroshockers immediately upon starting this phase, and players need to be able to burn these things down. He'll summon a series of crawler mines around the arena who will focus in on targets and slowly walk towards them. If any player touches a crawler mine, the crawler mine will detonate, sending that player knocked up in the air and creating two small soak zones that players need to get into. You have to be very careful with the movement in this phase because players are going to be accidentally touching crawler mines if they aren't paying enough attention, and the player that gets knocked up can get knocked into additional mines. The crawler mines are immune to damage and relentless. They will continue to chase you down until they have managed to touch a target, and then you need to soak these soak points before it wipes the group. He'll mark one player with a large soak circle. Multiple players need to get into that area, and then a goblin is going to fly in and detonate on the area, leaving a large molten pool on the ground, and then causing a volunteer rocketeer to spawn that needs to be burned down by the players. This goblin is going to channel a beam into targets that deals stacking increased damage and will eventually take the targets out. So you need to prioritize to take out the volunteer rocketeer immediately. All players hit by this soak zone get a 500% increased damage taken from future soak zones for 1 minute. So So you're going to have half of your party soak the first one, so that half the party can soak the second one if you go through 2. The tank mechanic on this one is pretty interesting. He's going to pick one party member and put a red line pointing towards them. The tank needs to get in between the boss and that target, and then use a defensive cooldown. The target behind the tank is going to take damage based off of how much mitigation the tank had when it gets hit by the effect. The player will also get a big red circle around them that over a short duration will detonate, destroying all mines around them and causing their soak zones to show up. So that player needs to get away from all mines, making sure not to detonate any by accident. And finally, he occasionally picks a player and begins channeling a big cone effect at them. If there are any bombs within the cone effect, he will detonate those bombs. So again, you need to poke this away from all other bombs and soak the damage. All players need to get away from this effect, making sure that it only hits the target that it's focusing on. This side is a lot of damage. There's so much going on, and there's so many soak points and mechanics they have to deal with, constantly getting into areas and dealing with the bombs. Before transitioning the boss back to the Earth side, you want to make sure that almost all of the crawler mines have been dealt with. You don't want to be dealing with constant crawler mines while you're still trying to deal with the jail side. So this can get pretty hectic. Mugsy is constantly gaining a stacking Moxie buff that increases damage dealt by 1% every 5 seconds. This buff loses 10 stacks whenever you switch his sides, so it's another way to reduce the incoming damage. Due to the sheer damage of the bomb side, it's sometimes recommended to transition him after one rotation of bomb effects and deal with the Earth side more often. Whenever you switch him sides, he puts a unique stacking debuff on all players based off which side you move to. This debuff lasts 2 minutes, so you can't switch him back to the same side within 2 minutes of having transitioned there. Going back and forth, you're going to be constantly dealing him damage until you enter into the intermission phase. At 40% HP, he's going to begin a new phase. In this intermission, he's going to put a big white arrow pointing at a player. That player needs to move away from the boss, and all other players need to get in between the boss and the arrow. He'll charge through, splitting damage dealt to the target that he smashes into based on how many players he goes through. Upon reaching the destination, he'll begin rotating around the room with his arms out, shooting out 2 large cones of damage that'll kill you pretty quickly if you're in there. So you have to rotate around with him. After the channel, he'll put out another arrow, all players need to get into it, and then reposition to the new location, constantly moving around the arena until he's done this charge a number of times. This will begin Phase 2, which is a heavy burn phase. He gains all of the abilities from Phase 1, regardless of what side he's currently on, and you can no longer switch his sides by going to the different sides of the room. He's going to have all of the different mechanics, and he's also going to have a Bloodlust, increasing his haste by 30%. Now in this phase, you're going to be dealing with him putting out the bomb jails, the icy shards, as well as summoning the cluster bombs and shooting out the fiery projectiles. Constantly rotating through all the abilities crammed into a much smaller space and dealing with both sets at the same time is absolutely chaotic. You're going to want to be lusting as soon as the intermission phase begins and trying to do as much damage to him during the intermission as you can, so this final phase does not last very long. In attempts I've seen, players managed to get into about 20% before Phase 3 began, but still a significant amount of time based off the HP of this boss and how many mechanics you're going to be dealing with. The final problem in this phase is that if he ever reaches 100%, he will just raid wipe the party, and you can no longer get rid of the double-minded fury debuff by switching him sides. So there is a hard enrage mechanic at this point that you're going to have to burn him through. You're going to want to be stacking the mechanics up against the wall for the jails, and having the bomb players move around in the center of the room, kiting the bombs around as much as possible. If a bomb ever touches the walls of the jail, it will detonate the wall and create the soak point mechanics. So you might want some of your bomb players to go into the jails to be able to have the bombs detonate and get rid of the walls a little bit sooner, so more players can help take out the elementals inside. Watch out for the finger guns, the spray and pray, and the guided rocket, trying to make sure not to get unfortunate targets caught in these different mechanics. I hope this guide helped you figure out how to handle Mugsy. If you want to know about the mythic changes, we've got a mythic overview right over here. I'm Zesty Fresh with Zaza Games, and we'll catch you guys next time. Zaze.